I feel sick to my stomach. I can't keep my food down. In fact, I never want to think about eating again. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning. The new neighbors moved into the house across the street from us just a few weeks ago. The place had only been on the market for a matter of days before the deal closed. At least, that's what I heard from the real estate agent, which isn't surprising given the housing shortage right now. That afternoon, I was in my office, which is on the second floor of our home, the window of which directly faces the street. The moving truck had been parked there all day, though I found it a bit odd that all I'd seen thus far were movers. Every time I looked up, which was often since I couldn't focus on my novel, I expected to catch a glimpse of our elusive new neighbors. But alas, I was going to have to stay curious. My wife, Carmela, was the one who originally suggested we invite them over for dinner. "I think it would be a really nice gesture," she said, while we were eating at the dinner table that night, just the two of us. As much as I like watching people through my office window, I'm not particularly crazy about interacting with them. Do we have to? We barely ever spoke to the Carmichaels, she reminded me. I'd love to actually get to know our neighbors this time. Sure, yeah. I said this so casually, shrugging my shoulders, as if agreeing wouldn't change my life. But if I could go back in time, I would have shut down the idea right then and there. The next morning, when Carm left for work, she asked if I could take a break from my novel at some point and knock on the new neighbor's door to invite them to dinner like we'd discussed. Of course, I said. All day, I dreaded the task. It was actually giving me so much anxiety that I couldn't even get any work done. Finally, just after lunch, I decided to get the deed over with. I went outside, crossed the street, and walked up the steps of the front porch. The first thing that struck me as odd while I was standing there was the fact that all the curtains were drawn, despite the fact that it was daytime. The Carmichaels didn't even have curtains, I thought to myself. Did they just put these up? My heart began beating a little faster, while I anticipated the awkward first meeting conversation. I told myself to just knock on the door, but that was easier said than done. I'll just tell Carm they didn't answer, I finally told myself. Because why not? It felt like a believable enough lie. The moment I stepped back down the porch is when I heard it. The front door creaking open. I stood there, frozen, now trying to think of how I was going to explain why I stood at their door for 30 seconds before walking away without even knocking. "Can I help you?" It was a woman's voice. She honestly sounded pretty nice, as well as confused, and I couldn't really blame her for that. I turned around and saw her narrow, pale face sticking out of the doorway. She seemed to be around my wife's age and wore her dirty blonde hair up in a bun. She seemed a bit sweaty, too, which made sense considering moving absolutely sucks. "Oh, It took me another second to reply, but I finally managed to get some words out. "I'm your neighbor from across the street. I was just walking over to say hi, but I, decided not to bother you while you were still getting situated." The woman smiled at me, showing teeth. "You're no bother at all. I appreciate you saying hello. I'm Liz." I fudged a smile. "Ryan. Also, my wife was wondering if you and your, partner would like to join us for dinner sometime." "You're so kind. My husband Dennis and I would love to come over," Liz said. "How's Friday night?" I couldn't tell her what I was really thinking, which was that Friday night, as well as any other night, were all no good for someone who doesn't like to socialize in general. But I simply smiled and said, "We'll see you then." As I walked back across the street to my house, nerves finally under control after completing my one social task of the day, it dawned on me that I probably should have asked if Liz and her husband had any dietary preferences or restrictions. In retrospect, I'm so glad I didn't. All week, I dreaded the event. By the time Friday finally rolled around, I told myself that if I had a decent amount of wine with dinner, then perhaps I'd be slightly less miserable. I started drinking before they even got there. Anyway, dinner was actually nothing special. Liz and Calm seemed to get along pretty nicely, and Dennis was your average, boring husband who wore smudged glasses and probably worked in some boring office downtown. We made small talk, spoke of the weather, the stock market, recent movies, books, which I lied about finishing. After we finished our food, Liz offered to help Calm clear the dishes and prep dessert. I was silently screaming on the inside when they both walked out and left Dennis and me alone at the table. Time seemed to pass in slow motion. I mean, the guy just sat there, sipping his wine and staring at me. At the time, it felt like such a strikingly dull moment. That's because I didn't know Dennis was about to say something that would consume me for weeks to come. "I wonder what you taste like." At first, I thought maybe I'd had too much to drink, or that I'd misheard him. I chuckled nervously as I tried to comprehend the statement. "What did you say?" I asked. Dennis took another sip of his wine before answering. "I think you heard me just fine," he said. Then he put his glass down, licked his lips. What the fuck? I thought to myself. Is this guy messing with me? I had no idea what to say. "You're not in particularly good shape," Dennis continued. "Plenty of fat. Fat means flavor." I was horrified, waiting for the "just kidding" to drop, waiting for him to burst into laughter and say, "Got you." But he never did. Instead, I watched as a single drop of saliva began to slide down from the side of his mouth. He's drooling, I realized. He's drooling because he's thinking about eating me. That's when the kitchen door swung back open, and Calm and Liz came back in, carrying desserts for the four of us. Dennis nonchalantly brushed the drool from his face. "I hope you're hungry," said Calm in a sing-song voice. "Dennis just loves chocolate cake," Liz added. My heart wouldn't stop thumping. My mind wouldn't stop racing. There was simply nothing I could say. So I stayed quiet for the rest of the night, gently poking at my cake. By the time Liz and Dennis finally went back home, Calm was already on my case. "Why'd you get so quiet?" she asked. "It was kind of rude, frankly." I was still too freaked out to defend myself. And honestly, I didn't even know how to begin to explain what had happened. "Hey," Calm started. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" Obviously, I wasn't. "Did something happen at dinner? I can't help you if you don't talk to me." I swallowed, then finally told my wife the truth. "Dennis, he said that he wondered what I tasted like." "What?" Calm was confused, as was I. "I dunno," I admitted. "He was talking like he wanted to eat me." The moment the words left my mouth, I knew what Calm would say, and I was right. "That's insane," she laughed. "He was probably just joking." It really didn't seem like it. Our conversation escalated into a small fight, which was crazy, because Calm and I almost never fought about anything. And here we were, debating about whether or not my neighbor implied he wanted to eat me. "I don't like seeing you like this," she said. "The next time I see one of them, I'll clear the air." "I don't know if that's such a good idea," I said. "I have to," Calm said. "I don't want us to lose our new friends before we even got a chance to be, well, friends." As much as I didn't want her to bring it up to Liz and Dennis, I was also curious as to how they would do damage control. "All right," I finally agreed. That night, I didn't sleep a wink. The next morning, I was standing near the front door, saying goodbye to Calm and rubbing sleep from my eyes. "Have a good day at work," I mumbled. "Hey, Liz is grabbing the paper," said Calm. "Let's run over there really quickly." "Oh, I dunno." Calm was out of the door before I could protest. I kicked my slippers on and went after her. The two of us intercepted Liz on her lawn, just as she was making her way back into the house. "Morning, Liz," Calm shouted, rushing across the street. Liz turned around, a sleepy smile on her face. "Hi, Calm. Thanks again for inviting us over last night. Dennis and I just adored your cooking." "Oh, it was no problem," huffed Calm. By now I'd caught up to my wife and was standing just behind her, as if I was a little kid waiting for his parent to handle the confrontation so I didn't have to. "Listen," Calm continued. "I'm sorry to bring up such an awkward topic, but apparently Dennis made a joke to Ryan last night, and it rubbed him the wrong way." Liz immediately looked apologetic. "Oh my god, what did he say?" Calm and Liz both stared at me, waiting for my answer. "Well, he said, she's going to think I'm insane," I thought to myself. I'm going to sound like a crazy person. It seemed like he was implying that he wanted to eat me. Calm forced a laugh, apparently trying to lighten the mood. "I know it's ridiculous," said my wife. I told him that Dennis probably just has a dark sense of humor. He was kidding, right? Suddenly, Liz wasn't smiling anymore. She looked to Calm, dead in the face, then back to me. Actually, no, he wasn't. My heart was now beating out of my chest. Excuse me? Said Calm. My wife seemed angry now. I don't find this funny, Liz. I'm quite serious. As am I, Liz insisted. And frankly, there's nothing funny about it. Dennis and I have discussed it at length, and we've decided that we're going to eat the both of you. Ryan first, then you. And there's nothing much you can do about it. Calm and I stood there, speechless, as Liz calmly walked back into her house and shut the door. I couldn't believe what had just happened. And as messed up as it is, a small part of me was actually glad this time. My wife wouldn't try and tell me I was crazy for what I'd heard. Once we snapped out of our terrified stupor, we both ran back across the street, as fast as we could, slammed the front door shut, and locked it. I could barely see straight. I felt like I was having a panic attack, only worse, because at least those pass with time. I looked at Calm, trying to correct my vision. Everything was spinning. Finally, her face came into focus. There were tears in her eyes, and I could feel them in mine too. In light of recent events, my wife and I realized two things. One, we needed professional help. And two, we didn't have any real evidence. Nevertheless, we spent that afternoon waiting in the lobby of the police station for nearly an hour before anyone was able to help us. I didn't even know the whole thing was going to work, to be honest. I'd never been involved in a situation where I had to beg the police for help before. When the cop standing at the front counter finally called us up, he said that we'd be able to speak with a trainee officer in the back. Is there any way we could talk to someone with a bit more experience? My wife asked. Yeah, like maybe a detective? I added. The cop sure didn't seem to like those questions. He simply gestured to the door that led to the back room and said, "You want to talk to somebody or not?" We both nodded and headed towards the door. As the cop let us through, I quickly glanced down at his name badge. Officer Devour. I blinked once, twice, 3 times. My eyes were dry from the lack of sleep, and I was sure that I'd misread it. But by the time I tried to take a second look, I was too far away to re-examine the letters, even while squinting. You're paranoid, I told myself. No need to tell Calm. And I didn't. The trainee, predictably, was zero help. I mean, he took down copious notes while we told him the story and all the details. But after all was said and done, he basically said there was nothing he could do for us. Why not? We asked. Listen, he said. I've got nieces and nephews, a couple fresh babies in the family. Sometimes I blow kisses on their pudgy little stomachs and say, "I'm gonna eat you up." Now, does that sound like a threat to you? Calm and I were pretty miffed by that. I'm sorry. You're honestly comparing those two things? Calm's voice was getting louder. I'm simply saying there's not much we can do about words. Threats must be specific and targeted, said the trainee. I sighed, told Calm we should leave. This was hopeless. As we walked out of there, the trainee said one last thing with a smile. To be honest, I think they're just joking around. Seriously. But jokes are supposed to be funny, I said. Different things are funny to different people. He shrugged with a smile. I didn't like what he was implying. In the car on the way home, a sentence came out of my mouth, seemingly without my permission. Maybe we should buy a gun. Calm looked at me like she was shocked that I would ever suggest such a thing. I mean, I was, too. Sure, I'd written a handful of thrillery crime novels and done a ton of research into guns for various books, but I had always staunchly been against the idea of owning one. Until now. It seems like an extreme step to take, said Calm. Besides, what if that trainee was right, and this whole thing really is a joke, and they're just playing the long game with us? The long game? Sure, like an elaborate prank. I considered the option. That seems needlessly cruel and a straight-up insane thing to do to a couple you've just met. You're right, said Calm. But what's the alternative? That was a very good question. That night, I found myself constantly walking over to our front window. Every so often, I'd stand there and eye the house across the street from afar. Nothing much seemed out of the ordinary, except for the fact that Liz and Dennis kept their curtains closed all day. But then again, I guess there were a lot of people in the neighborhood who preferred their privacy. I began taking notes in my phone, documenting their activity, just in case. Their living room light stayed on until 9 p.m. exactly. Then the house went dark, save for an orange glowing hue coming from the upstairs bedroom. I could imagine Dennis and Liz in bed, both with a book in hand, reading, as if they were perfectly normal people who didn't tell their neighbors that they would soon be eating them. Once we got into bed, my wife held out her hand. There was a very small pill inside of it. It was white and looked like a dry, chalky mint. Here, she said. What is it? It's one I take before plane trips. It's nothing strong. It'll just calm you down. But I don't want to calm down. Ryan, she sighed. I grabbed the pill from her hand and stared at it for a while, and finally popped it into my mouth and swallowed it dry. Then I waited impatiently for the panic to dissipate. I was awake until I wasn't, but it only felt like a matter of seconds before my phone buzzed loudly on the nightstand next to me, which instantly woke me up. I'd forgotten to turn on night mode. I grabbed my cell and turned it over to reveal someone was calling me from a private number. My first thought was that it was potentially someone from the police station. Maybe they found some useful information, I convinced myself. You should pick up the phone. So I did. Hello, I said softly, trying to not wake up Calm. But there was no one on the other end. Hello? Is anyone there? Then I heard something. At first it sounded wet, like a tongue clicking or saliva spattering. Then that wetness grew into a chomping. That's when I realized what I was hearing. It was the sound of someone eating, as if they placed the phone directly up to their mouth while attempting to masticate as loudly as possible. "Who is this?" I demanded to know. The sounds continued, seemingly getting louder and more intense. It felt like I was dreaming. For a minute, I wondered if I was. Wait. What was in that pill? Was it Xanax? Something else? I should have asked. Why didn't I ask? "Please," I begged. "Why are you doing this to us?" Finally, the chewing stopped. Silence. Just heavy breathing. Then a man whispered something into the speaker, food still clearly in his mouth. "Because I need to know how you taste." Suddenly, a level of fear swept over me that I didn't even know was possible. I dropped the phone. I'm not sure if I even hung up. I just started shaking and shivering, as if I was suddenly in a blizzard. "Please, wake up," I told myself. "You're dreaming. This is all a dream." That's when I heard my wife say, "Ryan?" She flipped her bedside lamp on, and the dim light was somehow blinding. "What happened?" she asked. I still didn't know. Was it real or just a dream? But I knew how to find out. I grabbed my phone, went to the call log, and there it was. A single call from 1 minute ago, which lasted exactly 36 seconds. "What is it?" she asked again. "I'm so scared, calm," is all I could say. Hello, Sinister listeners. If you've enjoyed this story, then you'll find all the author's information in the description below. For more content, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to succumb to the sinister.